He went back. Get this
Hey, the rocks are going to have to go right in front of them, but it's going to have to be staggered back and forth.
Five. Fifth one, sir. Come on. Who needs that? Who needs that?
They're going to fall.
All right. Come on out, talk about talking. Here we go, here we go, rolling, rolling, rolling. Rolling, rolling, rolling.
I'm on D. Up.
Blue wanna be a young master too. Blue wanna be a young master too. Oh, to the way.
Well, yeah. Curiosity.
Yeah.
It's not curiosity. Kicked out that way. That was Smoketown Road. Move around the other side of the cornfield.
Okay. Good, everybody. Over here. All over here.
I'll pass
Let's go Northwoods and Westwoods, and Sir Knox is going to do Eastwoods. Okay. So just to let you know where we are right now, we're on this road right here. Looking out, Northwoods would have been out in front of us. The cornfield, this scale, by the way, is a lot smaller than the scale you've been used to looking at. The church is right down here that we just came from. So you're only talking yards. So right here you got 6 of the yards. 6 of the yards down to here, so maybe a kilometer from here to the church. Then the cornfield would have been out. It looked like there was an open field here, and then the cornfield was actually down here, so further down. This is where Hooker started his advance. So basically, he got orders, hey, go find the enemy. They knew they were around Dunker's church. He told them to start going forward towards Dunker Church. And you kind of see that, in a lot of Civil War battles where they filling out the lines. It's just kind of a recon by fire. They're just moving out, trying to draw fire and determine where the enemy is. So there's artillery set up, I believe, somewhere around here. Is that right, Dale? There's some the northern artillery.
There's artillery position over yonder.
Okay. So they're starting to fire. The infantry are moving out under the artillery fire. The South knows something's going on. Jackson starts moving up brigades onto a line in front of Dunker's church, going from the east to the west. So he's basically starting to set up a line out there. Okay. Okay. The north. I assume the north was somewhere back here. Is that correct?
Right.
There was
Okay. All right. So the artillery's going off. It's about 6:30 in the morning. Sorry, Melvin.
Yeah.
He's in the reading I had, about 300 yards in front of the Confederates' line. So the whole line is actually 300 yards behind him, and he's kind of their advanced force, and he's the one that first makes contact with the North, which you saw in the film. So the North comes to the cornfield. They encounter Lawton. There's a fierce battle at that point. The North pushes through and pushes Lawton. He pushes him to the right to the Hagerstown Pike. At that point, that's where in the film that you saw last night, they're kind of eyeball to eyeball. You know, if you can picture some soldiers here, some soldiers there, firing at each other, but just on the Hagerstown Pike. So he pushes those guys over to the west, on the edge of the West Woods, across the Hagerstown Pike. At that point, the North has momentum, but then Jackson launches a very strong counterattack. He drives the Feds back to the cornfield, and they're kind of going back and forth in the cornfield at this point. No one actually gaining ground. At this point, Hooker's offensive is kind of fizzled out, and Mansfield comes in with fresh forces. He kind of passes by, the way I understand it, just kind of bypasses the Hooker's corps. Mansfield corps comes in. He's got two advances. He has one advance going through the West Woods. That gets
attack. General Doubleday was down over here on the right-hand side. General Ricketts was on the left, and then General Meade was in the back. They were all pushing together, so there are two front with a third in reserve to plug in the holes. That started at 6 o'clock in the morning. On the southern side, General Jackson moved his corps up to meet Hooker. General Jones was on the left, over on this side, and part of Ewell's brigade, which was led by General Lawton, was on the right-hand side, and Lawton was the one that came in first contact right over the Ivy line, where Ricketts met Also, Stark and Taliaferro's brigades, part of Hood's division. It says in there, the cornfield, if you look at Miller's farmhouse, the cornfield was over to your left, straight ahead. This is actually where most of the fighting went on during Antietam. The bulk of the fighting was right in there for obvious reasons. If you ever been in a cornfield, you know your line of sight, all that is blurred. Matter of fact, in the movie last night, if you heard one of the soldiers talking about it was a glorious sight to see the standards. Of course, everybody knows the standards was the way they moved. That's when they knew they were coming, and they were laying there and waiting. And actually, I'm picking it up at 8 a.m. when Wolford, Law, and Ripley, the brigades, were driving the last of the Union Corps back through the cornfield. And then all of a sudden, the 12th Corps comes up, drove Wolford, Law, and Ripley back out of the cornfield. And then at 8:30, Colquitt's brigade, Confederate, from the sunken church, made one last attempt to take the cornfield. This is going back and forth, and this battle lasted the longest. He succeeded until he come back up through the cornfield and met fresh troops. It was Tyndale's, I think it was Tyndale's brigade, Roger. And after a long battle, he was finally driven back, and then from there they went.
Police car.
Exactly what happened. We are about to whip and surprise that ass.
Ooh, I got that on tape.
All right. Get online over there.
Now,
Ooh. Go down a little bit.
damn people.
Now the reason we're doing this is to show you how we can destroy just picture yourself, Union, coming out of the cornfield. You're not expecting anybody over here waiting for you. Jackson had his soldiers laying down.
Lay down. Don't worry, y'all ass be dead in a minute.
Oh, shit. Like I told you earlier, they knew you were coming. They could hear you. See your standards.
Can't see me, can you?
Jackson tells them to rise.
You want to try that again?
You're good.
You did? Get down! All down! Charge! You ain't gonna play right, you ain't gonna play at all.
Next.
Get out of here, man.
Dix, observer behind you. Okay, move forward, Sergeant Smith. I can't see you at all. Okay, Sergeant Davis in the back, move to your left. Everyone looking at me, smile. One, two, three. The officers fill in.
All right, everybody.
Go.
Stay there.
Sergeant Davey, stay there. Stay
Where you're at.
It is just about 9 o'clock, is the point we're talking about right now. Okay? As we've already gone through, Hooker and Mansfield have moved into the north, Sedgwick coming in as well. Okay? There's dynamic combat pressure as forces are being applied in the area of the cornfield. You can't see exactly what's going on in the cornfield because it's high. It's about 2 feet over your head. Okay? We've already been over that. Dynamic combat pressure, with more coming in from the north, is forcing the line of battle to pivot like a wheel. When it pivots to a wheel, we get that point we saw in the movie last night where you had forces that were merely 12 feet apart on one side of the road, the other side of the road. Okay? We already talked about Hagerstown Pike. Okay? Now we're here at the West Woods. Punch across in here. I'm sorry. Williams was supposed to break this apart. I'm moving it out.
Yes, Troll, you're next to each other. You have to have some degree of dress, and you dress on the colors. The other thing that Hooker did was he dressed along Hagerstown Pike. That became his right edge, his guide right, to continue the march to the cornfield. It wasn't until Mansfield came down that Mansfield took a unit and actually brought it around to the right of Hooker, and that was Sedgwick's attack here, which was then decimated by, by the reinforcements of the Confederates. However, one of the things to remember is the removal of Union commanders. Hooker was wounded. He left the left battlefield, fell to Mansfield. Mansfield was killed. So your communication, your orders, now disintegrated because lower echelons of command did not have had the vision and the picture McClellan had, which is where Sumter, when he came in again from the left. Hooker, then Mansfield, then Sumner. A position that was never challenged. That was one of the more devastating, had one of the devastating effect on Union troops was Stuart. Stuart's guns were on a hill further off here to my left, your right, a place called Nicodemus Hill. If you look at your map, you'll see where it's off to the other side. That's also where his cavalry screen was set up to defend Lee's flank on the Potomac. One of McClellan's original concepts for Hooker was to break Lee's flank. And if Hooker had extended his line to the right and challenged Stuart, he may have been able to reach the river, which in turn break behind Lee's position. That was never taken, because by the time Hooker had enough forces to consider that being Mansfield coming online, he was wounded and out of action. Mansfield was then killed. So that vision, that operational concept of breaking that flank ended with the two of them. So Stuart, unchallenged, continued to rake fire from his cannon and continue to hold this flank. Holding this flank is also what allowed Lee to maneuver units in his rear to support, because the last counterattack that stopped the assaults here in the cornfield was bringing Walker from all the way down the other end of the line behind him up to challenge the last assault here. And then those same troops could be repositioned, and we'll see them come in again later to reinforce other lines. Lee had the advantage of interior lines. He was able to maneuver within himself to reinforce. The Union continued to fight sequentially from exterior lines. And this exact reverse is what occurred at Gettysburg, where the Union could reinforce from the center while the Confederacy had to attack from the outside. Okay. That's all we have now. Just take the time.
Lee was an engineer trained at West Point. He understood terrain. He knew this was going to be a good place. It's a natural defense, it's a natural trench. You didn't have to do any work. The only thing they did to improve it was put defense rails up like this. They were set, they were ready. No work expended, as men arrested. This is the center of his line. It has to hold. For half a mile, there's Confederate soldiers, you guys, holding this trench line. First wave of Union troops comes over the hill about 9:30. The green troops, they don't know anything about fighting other than just line up and shoot. As Major Remy pointed out, this is the maximum effective range of the weapons for the Confederates at the crest of that hill. It's an easy shot for them. The guys are silhouetted for one. They're nice tight lines. The Confederates can just fire all day long. They've got their best shooters up here. People down here reloading that don't shoot as good. That group breaks up. Second wave comes over. Same thing happens. Another massacre. Confederates are just having a field day. Shooting the lines, holding great. Union forces are getting disorganized. They don't know what to do. Third and fourth group come over. They're a little better. They start to get some of their own. They stop at the crest of the fire now. Now it's an even exchange. You have 5,600 guys killed on both sides right here alone. Union forces starting to make some ground. To the east, they see a weak point in the line. They manage to get the troops in there, and they do what's called a defilade. They have now flanked the Confederates. They've got all their troops lined up down there. They're shooting down into this trench, which is now becoming a killing field. Confederates panic. One officer either misinterprets his orders or panics. Nobody's quite sure what. He pulls out his unit. The minute they see that, they start getting back. The whole Confederate line starts to collapse. I read an account where some troops ran all the way back to Sharpsburg before they even stopped running. That's a hell of a run. Think about it. Over this terrain, through the cornfields, whatnot. I mean, that's just panic. However, McClellan is too far away. He doesn't see what's happening. He doesn't take advantage of this. If he had committed his reserves, the Civil War could have ended right here, in this spot. Unfortunately, he didn't see to do that, and the war lasted another 3 years. He gave the Confederacy 3 years of life right here. What happens is the Union forces do come up, the Confederates try to counterattack with a small force. They really don't make any head ground, but they do reestablish their line. As such, the Union forces are stopped here, and they push on further down the Burnside Bridge.
In place, the messages came in reaction. Again, by never moving forward.
It's a long way to check that place.
That's right. So everything he got and then responded to.
Where was Lee Plummer the whole time, sir? Lee's headquarters is not far from where the visitor center is. So he was on the edge of Sharpsburg. He was in a position, to understand what was going on and then maneuver his forces back and forth. But Lee came forward at times to engagements and then was refused to attack unless he fell back. But Lee fought.
These fixes symbolically thing they just put out here for nostalgia.
Ready?
Hey, the Crown Royal backs his reserve.
Hold on.
Are you ready?
He goes to the field, he's on his own.
Get ready. 30 seconds.
Hey, we're James behind. Hold on.
That's a known thing.
I'm spending more time on him than they did on me.
Who up there is frisking him?
You're gonna have a perfect kid, man, no matter what. Shoot.
I don't know, it's been a while since he's jumped. Is he better refresher?
Hold on.
Get ready to the door. Stand by. Battle. Green light. Go.
One down.
Perspective. This is actually the evening phase or the afternoon phase of the battle. Just the morning phase and the midday phase was named and explained to you by headquarters and Alpha Company. Now, this right here is the afternoon phase. It's going to bring Major General Ambrose E. Burnside and his men into play, 9th Corps. All right, what happened was Burnside was up at Price Ford. Okay, he moved his men. His objective was to, just like with the morning phase and the midday phase, was to move towards Sharpsburg and take out Lee's men. Okay, he was going to execute this by moving his men across that bridge. If you see the bridge, the lower bridge down here, he was going to move his men, as you were, four of his divisions from the 9th Corps across that bridge. Okay, what happened was 400 Georgians, okay, from the Confederate Army were up on this bridge right here, just taking them out. They advanced this way, AP Hills, as you were, Major General Ambrose E. Burnside's men
From
advanced
Jones.
up this avenue here. And the 400 Georgians, okay, just imagine, 400 Georgians just spread right here, and we're just picking them off one by one, okay? Now, what happened was a whole lot of men fell that day. So they tried to cross the bridge, cross the river right here, or the creek right here. They couldn't do so. So they had to retrieve. They moved back, okay? Now, they rushed along this avenue approach right here, and they got on the other side of the bridge, and they took cover on that stone wall you saw up there, and that's how they held themselves for a while until they got themselves back together. Okay, then what happened was Major General Ambrose E. Burnside, he thrust across the bridge. They actually crossed the bridge. They fought off the Georgians. They killed off the Georgians here, the 400 Georgians. They sent one of his divisions down this way to come up. Now just imagine, they was coming across the bridge, and it was coming across like this here. Now remember last night when you saw it there for like a few hours, the Federal or the Union Army actually gained momentum for about 2 hours, right? And then what happened? A.P. Hill withdrew his men from Sharpsburg and came all the way here, 17 miles. They marched 17 miles, okay, and flanked them, and just took them out. A total of 10,700 Federals or Confederate soldiers lost their lives, and 12,410 soldiers lost their lives from the Union or Federal Army. Total of 23,110 soldiers. Now, just imagine this here. This creek right here, it was a lot higher, and the current was a lot harder at that time when they tried to cross with all that the heavy stuff that they did have, with no shoes, and they haven't eaten in a long time. Okay, so just imagine that. And Captain Roll is going to take you a little bit further into what units, okay, actually fought.
Yeah, right.
One of the Georgians, okay, that was up across this ridge right here. They definitely, or the terrain gave them the opportunity, or they gave them the advantage. Now, of course, they killed off 1,000 Federal or Union soldiers because of the terrain that they had. Now, they came down the avenue approach like we stated earlier right here. Now, imagine this. They had to go ahead and they had to rush across this field with fire coming directly on them, over this hill, and they come back around. And, of course, they fell many times to cross this bridge until they made way right here to this stone wall where they covered themselves. You saw in the video last night when they was under the, when the Georgians had to fire on top of the bridge and it was missing them because of the stone wall here, okay, till they got themselves together. Then, of course, with the mad charge, they came across and they actually crossed the bridge. And at the same time, of course, Burnside sent men back that way to come up around to flank, and of course they were hit by A.P. Hill coming from Sharpsburg.
And when they